It's a warm day, and sending you wild and bushy lockdown regards wherever you may be. I'm looking at the tracks of a steenbok, which is the smallest antelope we have out here. Not the most conspicuous of mammals, but nonetheless a story to tell. And just by watching how he's walked down here, you can almost have a sense of what he's been contemplating just by looking at where he's placed his feet. Now we've come to a point here where he's stopped for a loo break, and what steenbok do is that they cover their droppings fairly much like a cat in a sandbox would. So with their front feet they'd scratch backwards. The female would do it in a parallel fashion like that. You'd see the parallel scrape marks. A male in a more V shape, and you'd see that V shape scraping, which is what we see here. Now what the steenbok is doing is attempting to hide as much evidence as possible to avoid the information of his whereabouts, of his movements, from falling into the wrong paws. And that's what tracking would be. It's an invitation to view the world and the information around us in a sensitive way. Now, a colleague of mine, his name is Cobra, he is a Suakwe bushman, people of the salt, and he lives in the Mahadi Pan area in Botswana, and he always used to say that when you're tracking an animal, it's like holding onto a piece of string. So you'd be holding the one end, and the other end would be attached to the animal that you are following. Any movements or change of behavior, even perhaps the presence of a predator, a change in wind even, that information would all be resonated through the energy of the string. And Cobra would also say that these little guys, the steenbok, would only venture out during the heat of the day where they knew the predators were less active. And he would feel the heat shimmering off the Kalahari sands, resonating his string when he knew the steenbok was close by. Now it's believed that the human animal has evolved in Africa over 3 million years or so. And it's also understood that Bushman communities of southern Africa are the oldest known cultures on Earth. Now, if that were the case, I would say roughly 95% of our genetic memory, all the information we have built up in our hard drives over time, is rooted in a hunter-gatherer existence. Or in other words, in a state of union with nature. Now, we have split away from that union of late, since we began to measure our wealth and well-being in terms of money and of possessions and of status. But this split has only happened very, very late, possibly at a second to midnight of our ecological timeline. And I don't believe there's too many people out there who would disagree that we need to re-evaluate or rediscover a set of simplistic values that in which we measure the world, we measure our wealth and well-being in terms of. And perhaps this is what the status of the world is now suggesting, that we need to move forward with this culture, but before we do, we need to internalize this sacred attitude to our mothership. In order to move forward, we need to map the future, but first we have to understand ourselves, we have to understand our present, but perhaps before we can do that, we need to contemplate our origins, back to the time where we lived with this state of union with nature. And looking forward to sharing more, tracking the new normal, and stay tuned. All the very best regards to you out there.